I've seen in many organizations, leaders monitor all the wrong things. They monitor all the wrong indicators. But the real problem is not visible. Several brokerage firms, their primary revenue model was they used to charge heavy commissions for every trade. You cannot manage the uncertainty. And that is why the concept of fail fast, fail cheap comes into picture.
At the end, if those planning doesn't meet the right execution, it's a blunder.
Yeah, whatever they would have learned with 20 lakhs, they have learned it in 10,000. Things change. The business models also will expire. The world is overwhelmed with too many AI apps, and in many organizations, many leaders, they're not seeing the legacy blind spots. They have a fear of not working.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. Today, we'll dive into what it really takes to lead us through change, complexity, and reinvention. I'm your host, Mohit Manghani, and with me today is a transformation strategist, someone who's seen firsthand how leadership really works when things get messy. Joining us today is the founder and CEO of Sain Innovation, Mr. Sekhar Burra. Sekhar sir, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Mohit. Thank you for having me. I'm Sekhar Burra. I'm the founder and CEO of Sain Innovation. So I work with leaders across various domains. I work with high growth startups on, business agility and CXO coaching. And I also work with, few top level CEOs on business model reinvention. How should you make your business model really relevant for your own organization? How do you adapt your own business model given the context and situation? So I worked across healthcare, banking, and fintech and insurance companies that are really booming up. And it is all about working with leaders on how we usually make things relevant for an organization. That is what I really work for.
That's a lot, actually, and especially this world relevant, which we'll touch upon in today's podcast. So let's start with something that every leader can relate to. The idea that the biggest dangers, the biggest risk in business aren't always the one you actually see. How do you describe that? Those hidden risks that, leaders can't see.
See, if you have seen this Titanic movie, have you?
That's my go-to film.
Yeah. So if you have seen this Titanic movie, in fact, Titanic was a real story. It happened in 1912. And Titanic was one of the most elegant ship at that point of time. It was one of the most advanced. And everyone thought that it was unsinkable at that point of time, So, but what really went wrong there? So majority of the problem, when they met into that accident, majority of the problem is not something above the water. And everything was below the water. 90% of the problem was below the water, and because of which every piece of the ship, it fell apart.
Yes.
So to me, if you ask me, most of the businesses today are like melting icebergs.
What a reference.
Yeah. So most of the businesses today are melting icebergs. Most of the business models are, to me, melting icebergs. And the reason why I say this is whatever used to work before is not going to work now. And majority of the time, these icebergs are really, really melting. And it is too late that someone see it. So I've seen in many organizations, leaders monitor all the wrong things. They monitor all the wrong indicators. But the real problem is not visible until it is too catastrophic.
Until the collapse happens.
Yeah, exactly. Until everything is fall. And then it starts with firefighting and chaos. So most of the time, that is what I have seen in many organizations where I call it as value erosion. Yeah, slowly the value erosion is happening and the legacy way of looking at it. So I call it as a legacy blind spot. So many times we don't see this legacy blind spot. And as a result of this, the value erosion is happening in many businesses, which many leaders are not aware of.
They are not aware of it.
They are not aware of it until it is too catastrophic. For example, if you take some examples of US brokerage firms like Charles Schwab and E-Trade, and there are several brokerage firms, their primary revenue model was They used to charge heavy commissions for every trade. That was their primary business model, where they get a lot of revenues on high commissions, in the form of high commissions. But what happened is Robinhood come into picture, and then they usually disrupted the whole thing.
Completely.
They completely disrupted the whole thing. And then, they went to zero commissions with elegant, nice UI. And they started targeting millennials and Gen Zs. And as a result of this, all these brokerage firms, which were running on that business model for almost 3-4 decades, they were forced to transform. They are forced to reduce their commission levels. And it is not that they wanted to, but they have to survive. Okay. So that's exactly what was happening in many organizations. Many leaders, they're not seeing the legacy blind spots. So there is small value erosion happening across everything. And as a result of this, slowly but steadily, you are being disrupted without you yourself knowing that you're getting disrupted.
Not just the US market, in the Indian market, we have seen a lot of companies. I think Zerodha is a company.
Yeah, exactly. Now, Indian market is, I think someone already started pivoting the zero brokerage model, where their business model is more of monetizing the data.
Data is the new oil, actually.
Yeah, exactly. So their business model is monetizing the data. So for me, what matters is most of the time, we are not seeing the real problem until it is too late.
And that too late can actually be quite too late.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, but actually, like you say this, let's dive into this one more thing, because all these big plans, they're kind of blocking your progress. Like, it's too late to see that. But now imagine this is a hindrance to your progress, is another thing. And we have also seen a lot of companies have those huge strategy decks. They have these long roadmaps, months of planning before actually anything moves on. Tell me, why do these leaders fall into that big plan trap?
See, what I call it as, it is a government style planning. See, most of the time, governments do very big bang planning at the beginning. See, when I was in my school, what I was taught was every project that we plan, we have to plan every variable perfectly. We have to create detailed milestones, and we have to lock down the budgets just 1 year before. Okay. And many leaders wanted it. Okay. So, but even when I was a project manager, I used to do the same thing. You know what? I used to make these big plans. They take hell a lot of time, and send it to my boss. My boss used to scroll all the way to the right and copy the end date in an Outlook email and send it to the whole world that this project will be delivered in 18 months from now.
Okay.
And then, a month or 2 months later, half of our team usually quit for their own reasons. And then now we are stuck with this plan. We don't have a team that can deliver on this plan. So I call this phenomenon as predicting the future. Now, how many of us are really, really good at predicting the future? Anyone has any special skills who can predict the future? And, the more you try to predict, the more chances that you will be wrong.
Many a times. I've seen that with cricket experts, but yes, you're right.
So humans are really, really bad at predicting the future.
Yes.
In my world, planning is more of a, I have a vision for a longer term, but I plan for shorter term. The more shorter you plan for, the more chances that you might meet your plan. So now you can ask me, like, why are leaders getting into this big plans and all? The point is, it feels safer for majority of the leaders. Planning big will give you a lot of clarity. Planning big will also give you a lot of what I call it as control and progress. But clarity is not, certainty.
True.
Yeah, I can plan so many things, but you are driving on a car from point A to point B. But what happens is, in the middle, you're stuck with a traffic jam. You want to reach in 30 minutes, but you're stuck with a traffic jam. And then what do? You try to adapt to a plan. So that is why in our world, we always make plans, but given a context and situation, we respond to market dynamics.
The constant change that was happening.
Change that really has to happen. See, most of the time, what I have seen in many organizations is they make a big plan and they track everything as per the plan. And usually, in my experience, I made a lot of plans and I never met these plans.
All of us.
Yeah.
Some point or the other. Let me be honest on behalf of everyone here.
So planning is important, but honestly, we are not plan driven. Most of the time, we try to respond to this plans. So in many organizations, what I have seen is they get locked up with these plans.
Yeah.
And they used to, track everything as per the plan. And they usually see, I'll tell you something. The cost of a bigger plan going wrong is very high compared to a cost of a smaller plan. And that is why the concept of fail fast, fail cheap comes into picture. How do you fail really fast? How do you fail really cheap? It's something like this, no? When you got stuck into a storm, don't send your biggest ship. Send 3 or 4 small boats, and then see which one survives. And you scale that up. So that is also what I call it as pilot of pilots. In many organizations, what I've seen is leaders do a lot of pilots, but they want that pilot to be very successful. That's why they put a lot of attention and focus on that pilot.
Correct.
But after the pilot, they go for a big bang execution and everything dooms.
And that's such a wonderful point because like you rightly said, it feels safer to plan. But then at the end, if those planning doesn't meet the right execution, it's a blunder.
Yeah. So the cost of bigger plans going wrong is very high. So how do you plan really small and learn from your experiments and see if you're able to make a difference? It's something like this. No, I was working with one of the wealth advisory firm.
Right.
And what this wealth advisory firm was doing is they had 20 lakhs set up for developing that platform.
20 lakhs.
Yeah, 20 lakhs. And then I went through all their requirements and I went through all their assumptions and all. And then I said like, okay, why don't you go and talk to customers by making a small prototype? So just go to like 40, 50 customers and then make a prototype and show it to them and ask them, is it something what they really want?
Worth spending or buying.
So, and then they were shocked to find out that at the end of that experiment, almost half of their assumptions were not true.
Good thing that they started on a...
Whatever they would have learned with the 20 lakhs, they have learned it in 10,000.
Big difference.
Big difference, isn't it? So if you don't want to experiment, you lose heavily.
Yes.
So that is why what is really important is the shift. This is the biggest challenge. Yeah.
20 lakh versus 10,000. But how do that shift happens? Because like you said, leaders are more inclined towards experimenting, making those little efforts count, but they don't look at the bigger picture. Like your vision must be big, but you're not focusing on the small steps.
Yeah.
How do they have that shift?
Many times I say that uncertainty is not your enemy. So make sure that you use uncertainty to learn something. So there is a famous framework called as OODA, OODA. Observe, orient, decide, and act.
Observe, orient, decide, and
act. So the more you run this circle,
right,
the more you get better at it. So how do you know that you are building the right product that fits the market? How do you know that you are continuously improving? And how do you know that whatever you are building so far is just what the market wants? So that is where it makes a huge difference in the way how we do things before versus how we are doing it. And most of the time, what I see leaders doing is they got, it's a what I call it as success trap.
Right.
So you get into that momentum where you say that we are too busy to improve.
Too busy to improve. Yes.
Yeah. So we are really busy. We cannot reflect.
What does?
We cannot reflect and again try to improve it. Right. So these are some of the nuts and bolts, but they got to really work with a lot of difference. Yeah.
Now that you say this, because speaking of the leadership mindset, they often think that doing more means being more strategic, but it may be the opposite. So if I may ask you this, when you think you're doing more, Is that actually being strategic?
See, strategic is the new label, no? So I have seen in many organizations, I see leaders saying that, oh, we are really strategic. And then they work on like 40, 50 initiatives across the organization. And and then, my question to every leader is, let's say you put 5% of your time and energy on 20 initiatives, or you put 30 or 40% of the initiatives, 30 to 40% of your effort on top 3 initiatives that makes the maximum impact. So it's all about how
Hard work versus smart work.
So it's all about where you focus.
Yeah.
So most of the time what happens is there are too many initiatives, and then they rarely get the time and attention from a leader to make a difference. So most of the time what happens is too many initiatives. See, if you say that everything is high priority, then you haven't made a strategy. You just made a list of things to do.
To-do list.
To-do list, yes. And the more you run through this to-do list, you are also spending a lot of time on low value things. So that is why I call it as the key insight that I always get in a strategy, what not to do is, you should practice what I call it as relative exclusion.
Relative exclusion. Okay.
What is that one thing that you feel like not spending time on?
What not to do?
What not to do? Yeah. What is that one thing, or what are like few initiatives that you don't feel like spending time on over the next few weeks or months? So if you're not practicing relative exclusion, then probably you are not really there yet. So what does that tells me is, so strategy to me is prioritization,
right,
plus relative exclusion. You got to exclude some things which are not creating impact.
But how do you decide that? How do leaders can actually improve this kind of, focus, or in your words, relative exclusion?
See, there are a lot of framework. For example, there's a framework called as Eisenhower matrix. So I usually use that matrix. So it's something like you put urgent and important. So, and then what is that you wanted to do it now? What is that you wanted to do it later? And what is that you wanted to delete from your list? What is that you wanted to reschedule?
Okay.
So most of the times when you don't employ any of these prioritization metrics or prioritization frameworks, I would say, so you have a really big challenge of not optimizing your time on the most productive things. So most of the leaders tell me that I'm very busy. Being busy is not equivalent to being productive.
That's a line that everyone should underline, and not just for leaders, but for every.
Yeah. So most of the time they have this back and forth meetings, lot of meetings. There's so many things that they do. But at the end of the day, are you really productive? Are you working on the most impactful things? No. So if you are someone who is watching this podcast, what I would say is, what is that one thing you wanted to remove from your today's list? And what is that you wanted to reschedule it? So it's all about what I call it as, are you using a flashlight or are you using a laser? So flashlight gives you
a broader,
and laser is the real, very sharp focus, right? So most of the time what happens is, if you are laser focused on top few things that create the impact, then you're really good to go.
So and in short, if I summarize it, saying no is also a strategy.
Excellent.
That's important. That's a gentle, good reminder for all of us that saying no is also a strategy. You don't have to keep bombarding yourself with tasks.
Yeah. Most of the time, yes, there's so many things for people to do, and these are all labeled as strategic. And then it rarely see any focus and execution on it. Yeah.
No wonder sometimes companies don't get the desired results what they plan. This brings me to something more connected. Relevance. Just because something has worked for a company in the past, it doesn't mean it will work again, right? But a lot of people don't really understand this. Tell us about that. What do you think of it?
See, there are so many good examples on this. For example, like you take a Nokia example. So in 2007 or 8 time frame, they have like 50% of the market share. In 2013, their market share is 3%. So what happened to this organization? It is not that they were incompetent, but the kind of shift, they couldn't make it happen. So that is what I call it as a relevance gap. See, most of the time, if you are still optimizing call centers when your customers want a WhatsApp bot, you are designing probably a business model for a customer who no longer exists. So you have a business model and your customers usually keep shifting across the models, isn't it? See, that is where the relevance usually comes into picture. See, what my experience is, the world is full of people who do a lot of irrelevant things. See, for example, you want to lose weight, but let's say if you eat like 4 packs of biryani every week, you know what you're doing, right? You want something and you do something else.
So doing the opposite, actually.
Yeah. So this is exactly what happens in many organizations also. They want to achieve something, but they do so many things that do not align to their goals. And you are always, let's say you're an employee, you're always rewarded to protect what was working before.
So keep doing on loop what is still working.
You will get promoted also to protect what you are working on. See, for example, I always say Kodak. Kodak, everyone know, the best company that have given us the digital camera and everything.
Good old days.
Yeah, good old days, isn't it? But what they did was they ended up protecting that film-based model. And there was a time where the market stopped caring about them. So you reach a point where most of the time there are so many irrelevant things that usually happen. And then, and why do people protect their legacy business models? Most of the time, what happens is they always believe that whatever was working before will work now. It was working then, and it will work now.
No, that's very interesting that you mentioned this, because I was going to say this. Now that you say relevance is the most important thing, not growth, not skill, but relevance. Still, you see a lot of leaders holding on to those outdated models for so long. Why is that?
See, most of the time it is what I call it as a romance with the legacy. So you have built a business model and you always think that this is how we build the business. And you don't want it to get rid of it. You don't want it to challenge your own business model.
Because that worked for you at a certain period.
It worked for you for a certain period and you assume that it will continue to work. So most of the time when situations change, when things change, the business models also will expire. So I call it as a shelf life of a business model. So shelf life. Every business model has a shelf life, isn't it?
Right.
So when business models expire, they don't know what to do except protecting that. And the other thing is they have a fear of not working. So for example, if we reinvent the current business model, whatever is working will not work. And I've also seen there was an absence of real-time feedback. Customers leave silently. So they don't want to give you a lot of hints before they're leaving. See, most of the time, even now, the world is overwhelmed with too many AI apps and websites.
It's endless now.
Yeah, there's so many. And majority of this, they don't solve my problems. Majority of these apps, they solve partially my problems. But overall, if I have to look at it, my problems are my problems. For example, I'm still looking for an AI app that can make my 6-year-old sleep early and wake up late. Or wake up early, whatever.
Don't think that has been discovered yet.
So the point is, we make so many things which are totally irrelevant, which do not connect to the real world purpose. And most of the time, we just get lost in the noise. So that is what many times happen. So you do things which are not relevant for an evolving world. So as I said before, in an evolving world, it is always advisable to make evolving plans, not fixed plans. So most of the time, our plans, we make it, it was written on the stone and it is locked forever.
Patthar ki lakdi, as they used to say it. This is what is written, this is what will be shown.
Yeah. But things change, right? And a lot of uncertainty built into it. The more you try to, manage the uncertainty, the riskier it is going to be. For example, if you are hit with another war or if you are hit with another COVID kind of situation, you cannot manage the uncertainty. And that is the real challenge that I often see. It is majority of the business models that you have these days are irrelevant to the current world.
Now that you say this, because from the outside, it's a business model, but for somebody, it's the mindset. So let's dig into another layer of this, the role intentions play. Because for any founder, something that has been working over the years, he will stick to it no matter what till the time you said he evolves. How important is that intention? Because it may work for a company, it may not work for a company. How important is to work on that?
See, I always say that founder's intention is the invisible architecture of a business model.
A very important one.
Yeah. So most of these intentions are not publicly revealed. For example, I have seen in my practical experience where there is a founder one who wanted to build a business for 3 to 5 years, and this person wanted to take an exit. So most of the time, this person is more interested in how can he maximize the revenue.
The quick startups hardly see nowadays.
So let's say, for example, let's say you have two restaurants, fast food restaurants, restaurant 1 and restaurant 2. The restaurant 1 owner is someone who wants to build a business and he wanted to maximize the revenue multiples. He wanted to bump up the valuations and then he wanted to exit. And his intentions are he wants more and more revenue to be shown on his book. Okay. And on the contrary, you have a founder 2 who wants to build a business for long-term sustainability, winning customer trust and everything. Legacy business model. So what is founder 1 and founder 2 are, let's say, for example, they're starting the same restaurant, that fast food restaurant. So let's say you buy a burger in restaurant 2 for 200. But this person is not looking for, founder 1 is not looking for profits. So he can offer you the same burger at 50. And now all the customers that founder 2 has are coming to
Number one.
And so because he's maximizing the revenues, he's not looking at the bottom line growth. It is easy for this person to bump up the valuations and exit. So there is a very deeper connection into it, how things happen. See, most of the time, for example, in India, there is a famous edtech company which played the same thing. They are not worried about economics, bottom line economics. They are really going mad on expansion. They expanded hell a lot. And then, finally what happened? Now they are struggling with all sorts of problems. So there is no this or that kind of right or wrong answer here, but most of the time, the intentions matter a lot. Most of the founders' intentions are going to kill the competition and take away the market share from them, and then they wanted to exit.
I think now this is where this important question comes. How do you build that kind of leadership that stays real, that stays responsive, that stays relevant? You have worked with a lot of leaders.
Yeah.
Tell me what.
So as a leader, keep your eyes and ears open. Respond to disruptions. If you are not someone who is responding to disruptions, you are being thrown out of the market. Disruption can come in many ways. Like, for example, there is your competitor who is taking all your customers. There is another competitor taking a piece of your business. There is a competitor who is diverting you in all directions. There are some competitors, Microsoft took over Skype, and you know what they did with it. Okay. So again, there's so many things that are happening. What I'm trying to say is every leader has to keep their eyes and ears open and respond to disruptions. Otherwise, so the larger the organization, the less chances that you respond to disruption.
Oh, so the bigger the organization, the less focus it is on those.
On those small things, which is coming from multiple directions. Yeah.
Wow, that's such an eye opener, because usually when you see a big organization, you feel everything is in place for them.
Yeah.
They must be having a dedicated team who must be looking into these concerns, addressing it, but it's the opposite.
See, these guys are busy protecting what they are working on. Yeah. See, because that's what they are paid for. That's what they are rewarded for. So if your goal as an employee, if you're rewarded for protecting what you're working, if you're not innovating into the future, then probably you have your own problems to deal with. As a business, it has its own set of problems to deal with. Yeah.
That's very powerful. Sekhar sir, I think we have touched upon such insightful points here. I think there's a takeaway for everyone. But right now, someone's listening and thinking, where do I even start?
Okay. So they got to think about, is the icebergs really melting? Is the value erosion happening for their own business, whatever it might be? You might be offering a product or a service, but is the value erosion happening or not? And the other thing which I wanted to look into is, most of the time, big bang plans, they stop you from learning. So big bang plans are not for learning organizations. So if you're an organization who wanted to learn and adapt, always try experimenting. And the third one is, how do you focus on top few impactful initiatives rather than focusing on 20 things or 30 things at the same time? And the fourth one that I wanted to always bring up is irrelevance. How are you ensuring that you are staying relevant to your competition? Most of the times, many organizations, they struggle to stay relevant to the competition. If you're not relevant to the competition, there's going to be a point where the market stops caring about you. You are no longer will be there, in their customer list. And finally, the founder's intentions are going to shape up the new competition. So most of the time, if a founder intention is to exit really fast, they are going to hype up, they are going to blow an hot air balloon. And, the traditional business models, they usually die their natural death. Yeah, these are few things that they can look into. Every business leader, I would always say that most of the time, business happens with a lot of effort and keeping your eyes and ears open.
Wow, that's really powerful. Sekhar sir, thank you so much for those lovely insights, and thank you once again for your time and patience.
Thank you. Yeah.
To everyone listening, this podcast comes down to one thing: adaptability. Thanks to you also for tuning in. We'll see you in the next one.